So then we're on. I'm going to pronounce this correctly because I was corrected in our channel. Even though it's spelled with Q's, it's actually pronounced Gregoric, and he is from Poland. So,
Okay.
so just so anybody knows, I had I had said the name incorrectly,
Yeah, me too, I'm sure.
and I wanted to make sure I corrected it publicly, and I apologize for that, Gregoric. I had definitely meant zero offense by that. So if you catch this on the video on demand or something, please know that I am sorry for doing that, but this is the Discord name and it's spelled with Q's, and so I just wanted to make sure we pronounced it correctly for you. So this is one of the rare Odette lists we have this season. Like Odette just kind of ran rampant in season one, right? Like we had three
Right.
or four Odette lists, and now we're down to two. Like Odette sort of went out of fashion in this tournament, just because I don't think Odette really ended up placing very
Two is
high
still a
season one.
significant portion of the field, though. Like,
Yeah.
it's no Herald apparently, but
I, I don't know why Harold was the rapid reaction.
because he's good.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think he is good. I think he's not. I'm not sure that Harold's the best Phoenixborn. I think his ability is relevant. His loyalty card is just meh, and um,
His ability is
just
extremely powerful. Like,
right,
because it costs no dice and it like essentially kills a guy.
correct,
Uh,
essentially. So, anyways, I do think that's interesting. I think Odette is. Yeah, Snake and Root Armored
right,
Knights. I,
Mad.
I, I agree with Matt. Yeah, I think the one half of that is 100% accurate, Root Armored Knights. The issue with Harold is that he doesn't really fight Root Armor very well. Like, he doesn't really bring that much to the table in fighting a Root Armored Knight, unless you specifically go the way I went with it. And we'll talk about it when we get to my list because it's just three more ways. So, um, so just like from that perspective,
Right.
he's good at
Root armor is good specifically against uh
like Harold pings and anybody that's running just like
well
I
just
mean lots of
it's just specifically it's good against Mark, right? Like
sure.
it just is. I mean it's not perfect. It doesn't literally turn it off, but it is good against it because it prevents before it's doubled. So
Right, which I thought for sure Harold was just like the end all be all answer to root armor, and that's just not true. So I mean that goes back to early AIL when I was still a noob and didn't fully understand how the damage dealing resolution worked. And once I learned how the damage dealing resolution worked, I realized Harold was not as well suited for fighting root armor on knights as you think at first glance, but still powerful and still fights above the curve, right? So like if root armor knights, if you plan to just do regular combat into root armor knights, then Harold's good at this. But um, for what it's worth, Odette is just the best at fighting root armor knights, right? Like Sword of Virtue has to just be the singular best card to take care of a hammer knight that or a any knight that's root armored. So I was
right.
surprised to not
The
see more Odette because of that.
well, I still think she's really good.
I do too. I think she's
I
excellent.
still think she's like the best one, probably.
I
Just
I
taking
think
into
she's
account
definitely
her
in.
text and her loyalty card.
Yeah, I think she's definitely in the swath of Phoenixborns that fit that top tier. I don't think she's the literal best, but I'm not sure I could pinpoint any one Phoenixborn that's the literal best.
Well, one of
Right?
them is I love you, Nick. I believe that you have done a great job with this game, but there's no way that they're balanced so perfectly that one isn't the best. Like
Um, do you think just
one is the
based on the
best, even
Phoenixborn,
if it's by a
just based
couple
on
percentage points rather
okay,
than like a significant value.
I just think it's really hard to evaluate that.
I agree. I don't think that in general the community knows because I don't think we have enough games played. Like there's no Ashes Online that plays 100,000 games in a week. But
Sure.
like I don't think it's possible that one Phoenixborn like that doesn't mean that like let's say Odette is the best Phoenixborn by 5 percentage points or whatever. That doesn't mean that the best deck isn't an Echo deck. I'm just using him because he's on the screen. I don't know if that's like that example is meaningless.
Sure.
But Mad says in the thing, it's always going to be meta dependent.
Um, I'm not sure I completely agree with that, man. Just to be fair, I think that currently we're still playing a lot of rock paper scissors and ashes, right? Like we're still currently playing like this type of deck, and then this deck we was doing good, so we're gonna react to that with another deck that's on a proactive plan that might be good against that. To your point, like when you talk about the heralds and the number of heralds and saying that everyone had the idea for killing Snake and Root Armor Knights, that's really sort of saying the same thing, right? We're saying the herald was a meta response, but it may be true. I'm not saying this is true, but it may be true that herald is just a great Phoenixborn regardless of what the meta is doing.
I think he is. I like Harold is an example. Like you were saying, like there's this swath of top ones or whatever, and I agree
Right.
with that. There's obviously lots of playable ones. Like even though I think Odette is the best Phoenixborn in a vacuum, obviously I'm not playing Odette in this tournament.
Hmm.
Uh, so she doesn't fit every deck archetype. But I think like if I was gonna go into a tournament where I didn't know the rules, like I went like you signed up for this tournament and you're like, okay, you pick a Phoenixborn and come into this tournament, and then afterwards they tell you what cards you can play. Like I would pick Odette every time.
Sure.
Like
I just think that Enter the Fray is
using the
so good.
vacuum, right? Yeah, Enter the Fray specifically is extremely strong. So is Sword of Virtue. That's why I think that she is very very good. But uh,
Right.
that aside, specific to our tournament, um, this list is. I mean, it looks solid to me.
It's basically
Uh,
the entire the this is another one of these reactionary ready spell setups because Odette's got a spell board of 3 and we're seeing what, 5 ready spells here. Lioness, Lightbringer, Frostbite Bear, Sarah Source, Mount Law of Grace. So I'm not sure what the consistent, like if there's a consistent like always bring Frostback Bear, or sometimes would swap between Sarah Source Mount, Frostback Bear,
well,
what
this
that
is just a
consistency is.
massive growth deck, right? Like,
Sure,
uh,
absolutely. This is very similar to
obviously,
Matt Bowers' like
right.
list
That's
from
what I was just
last
gonna say.
season.
All of his books are extremely powerful.
Hmm.
The Law of Grace, I guess, is to beat uh, redirect.
Hmm.
Um,
That would be my assumption on Law of Grace.
because I guess it's good. This doesn't seem like a deck that cares about hitting with its sort of virtues that much. So
Hmm.
like, I don't think it has Law of Grace for Golden Veil, though you could do that because there are
Sure,
lots of Golden Veils in our tournament.
there are.
Um, so I think Law of Grace is an interesting choice. I think mostly, like I said, it's for redirect specifically.
Right.
Um, because he has Frostback Bear for his massive growth. He has 3 copies of Shining Hydra.
Hmm.
So this deck actually has the Hydra combo in it, even though you are chained and can't do it round 1. You could potentially do it at any other point in the game because he has
Correct.
the Odette and the
Right.
Hydra.
It's just missing the Golden Veil, like the charm version to protect the Hydra. So it's definitely not all in on it, but I'm assuming if it opens itself up,
Right. And
then you
the
could do it.
Ceratosaurus mount specifically is pretty interesting to me because it only has 5 allies, and
Right.
2 of them are
So that,
not like ones that you want to recur, like bounce
which is
usually.
which is why I'm assuming that he's got the single ceremonial is to be able to bring that one raptor herder back if it somehow gets ice trapped or
Yeah,
removed from the
he has
game.
blood chains in his list. I think that's
Sure.
the only other. Oh, and Grave Knight, I guess. So that dice is multifunctional, but um, yeah.
Isn't Grace say no reaction spells, Mad? Isn't that the law of Grace?
Oh, am I being dumb? Am I calling out the wrong law here?
It's really easy to do with these laws because they're so similarly named. So give me just a second here. No, Law of Grace is just to stop 1 damage, so it's actually good for burn strategies, just to not take burn damage, I guess.
Oh,
And it heals Odette when it comes in. So we
that's
are
a
thinking of the Law of
and
Assurance, I think, is what is the one
law
we're
of
thinking
sight.
of.
Yeah.
Law of Sight, yeah. No play reaction spells. Yep, you're right. We are being dumb here tonight. Sorry, Mad.
Well,
Bunch of noobs.
if you had asked
Um,
me what law it was, with like if it just said law and blank, Grace is the last one I would have guessed.
yeah.
Not that that's
um,
wrong. I just don't.
Grace would reduce Odette's ability, I guess. Like if you have Grace in play and use Odette's ability on something that has 3 attack or 2 attack, you would only take 2 or 1 instead. But that seems really negligible. Like I don't think I'd want to be doing that, spending a die
Like
on
traditionally,
that
this would be
plan.
like you're worried about a coal or a uh
Yeah, I mean Cole would be potentially a threat, but I don't think this deck
what do you
worries
call
about
it?
Cole too much.
Uh, Chant of Revenge, that kind of thing.
Chant, Brennan, Frostbite, those kinds of things. It does some work on those kinds of
I'm not
cards.
even sure that uh it prevents the Odette Odetting herself.
Well, she takes damage from that ability.
Right, but I don't think the ability does the damage. I think the opposing unit does the damage.
Does it
Oh
matter?
no, the Odette does it. Okay. It says deal damage to this Phoenix Born equal to the target's attack value. It doesn't say that unit like deals it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it does. It works that way. Um, so
So,
that's an interesting choice. I would be interested to hear from Grigoric what the Law of Great Star for. But the rest of
and,
this looks pretty on
and
point.
one thing I'll say about Odette, after playing a whole tournament with her, is that the 3 summon books, and assuming that you're always leaving a spot open for Law, means you're really playing with 2 of these units in your matchup. Well,
Well,
along with 5 out. Well,
I think Law is for something like a match we had in mind. So you're gonna have 3 books against most things, 2 books and a Law against the things Law is good against.
sure. And I suppose it works pretty well against things like abundance if you get abundance milled. Um,
Yeah.
but but I think that um, one of the things that even with 3 books, 5 allies does not give you a deep pool to play in when
Well,
it
he
comes
kind of
to
has
creatures.
8 allies if you're just counting units, because Summon
Well,
Shining
plus the
Hydra is a
Hydra.
guy.
Yeah, that's true. So
Um,
eight's probably all right with 3 books. Eight's probably all right with 3 books. I'm probably just getting ahead of myself. I just forgot about the Hydra sitting down there in the action
yeah,
spells. It's
it's
easy to
it's
do.
essentially a unit.
Right.
um,
So, I mean, the 1x meteor, pretty good. I mean, I always like more meteors. I don't mind the blood chains. Interesting ability.
it's good with Lightbringer.
It is good with Lightbringer. It's also very good just with Polarity Mage as well after you get value from Polarity Mage. And,
And
you
this
know,
again is a deck that could potentially like get uh the double exhaustion out of blood chains, because there may be a
correct.
time when you sack your Hammer Knight or your Grave Knight or whatever if it's just gonna die.
Right. Um, and obviously the rest of this stuff is just standard removal. I like close combat with most of this list, although it does lack some reach into. I mean, the one Grave Knight with close combat's really good for reaching into other knights that aren't root armored. It doesn't have a good way to deal with root armor, um, other than the Sword of Virtue. That's
Well,
the only answer
it's
to
good
it.
if you have your own massive growth on anyone,
Sure,
and
that works as well.
it's really good with Shining Hydra in general,
Sure.
because the Hydra wants damage on it. I think it's a good card. Uh,
No, no, no. I'm talking about your opponent's root armor, not your own. I agree that the root armor in your own things is fine here. I'm talking about like you don't really have a good way to get past the armored one application. Nature's Wrath is dead to it. Meteor only deals 1. Close combat at its best is dealing 3.
oh well, he
So
has
you
Sword of Virtues as well.
right. I mean that's what you definitely have to have a sort of virtue there. I just worry like a single hard removal as a choice against a root armored knight. If they're playing charm, which we're seeing a lot
And
of decks have
Blood
charm with
Chains is good
Lavelle.
against Root Armor too,
Sure, it definitely slows
because
the tempo down.
this deck doesn't look like it's gonna play a long game. Like this
No,
deck is gonna have a couple giant attacks
yep.
if it's on its
Um,
plan.
so I mean, I'm sure. I think he did win round 1 with this list. We can pull up the standings here really fast. Bear with me. So settings, bracket.
Yeah, he's at table 2, it looks like, if these are in order on your.
Yes, yeah. You can just go back to round one and see though. Um, it's yes, he did win against DYN KYN Dinkin, I think is. I'm probably murdering that too. Sorry if I do. So he did win his round one against Dinkin to put himself up at table two here against Leonard the third this round. Um, so cool. I mean
I think the deck's
it's
cool. It's
yeah. I think it's like I said before. It's very similar to Matt Bowers' Odette list from season one, and
yeah,
I think that's just fine because Matt obviously is a great deck builder and a great
and
player. And
this deck is always going to have the massive growth because it
right,
has 3 copies and 2 polarity mages. Like,
right. It's never going to be without it for sure. So let's jump to Red King because this might be one of the mamiest
it
decks
is
of the tournament.
spicy. I played him in round 1.
So
Um,
this is an Echo. What is this? One, two, three, four, five color Echo. Okay. Um, it's Resonance, summon Iron Rhino, summon Salamander Monk, 3 Flute Mages, 1 String Mage, 1 Root Armor, a ton of action spells: Adrenaline Rush, Chaos Gravity, Choke, Close Combat, Kneel, Nature's Wrath, Refresh, Shared Sorrow.
right.
Uh,
This is a Rhino deck. It just wants to
this is
attack with
just a
Rhino
Rhino
more
deck.
than once
Yep,
in a turn
yep,
and in a round. And the one of the other stuff is like just stuff, right? Like for specific
right,
matchups. And it
yep,
has uh one, two, three, it has six untaps, and then it has Flute Mage.
right.
Um
So technically
sorry, 8
nine.
untaps and Flute Mage, because adrenaline, 2 adrenaline rush, 3 chaos gravity, 2 refresh, and 1 call to
Yep,
action.
yep. So
Um
it's just sitting on like 9 untaps essentially because Flute Mage is just an untap as well.
yeah, the
Um,
yeah, there's a lot. And uh it has a shared sorrow, which is cool because there's a lot of 2 costs in his pile. Um and
I was curious about the choice of Salamander Monk over like a
I assume
Butterfly
it's
Monk
I
or
assume it's just
something.
for Guild Link mostly.
Sure, but he doesn't have Guilt Link in his list.
No, I mean to stop opposing Guild
Oh,
Links.
stop opposing Guilt Links. But you could do the same thing with like a Butterfly Monk, right?
Well, Butterfly Monk gets nature pinged, and then you get
Then
Guild,
then
like,
you get
right?
linked. Yeah,
Like you at
yeah.
least have to do 2 removal spells on Salamander Monk before you. Uh,
True enough.
yeah,
Good
I
point.
think that's probably what it's for. I'm just guessing. It didn't. He didn't even play it in our match.
Okay.
Um,
So another Spellboard 3 Phoenix Born here, Battlefield of 6. I mean, we're seeing a pretty common theme when you look at Spellboard breakdowns of battlefield sizes. There's a lot of Spellboard 3 Phoenix Borns played in this,
there's
and
just a lot of 6/3s printed.
yeah,
Period. Like
right.
available.
Sure.
That's kind of the like the baseline. So,
So I
and
mean, I think
for
I think this is
Echo,
a
at least for this deck, the battlefield size is meaningless.
I think for um this particular tournament, I think this deck could catch people off guard if there was not an open deck list. Um
It's funny anyway. Like it's powerful.
right.
It has the potential to do a ton of damage right away. Um,
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Red King, I have a seal in my list, and I think, and I don't know this for sure because I haven't actually checked, but he said that it was the only seal in the tournament is the one of in my list, so he got paired against it round 1. Um, and I mean
I,
he was totally
I
cool
think
about
it's
it, but
gonna I think the Rhino's gonna have a hard time against Herald too.
right, I
Uh,
agree with that. He does have a root armor, which, like we talked
sure.
about, is good against Herald, but it's still not perfect.
Because the Rhino is essentially just like any other knight in terms of how you kill it, right? It just offers a more threatening unit, and obviously close combat's very good with Rhino. But like outside of that, just the plan you have for killing knights is the same plan you have for killing a Rhino. Only they paid 5, and if they put a root armor on it, 6 to play that. In this deck,
Right. It just his plan is to just smash you with it, right? Like,
right,
so
absolutely,
if you have hard removal for it, then it's troublesome if you try to attack it with guys. Like the root armor makes it hard, and he may get in 7. He probably kills a guy and does 2 to you.
Mhm.
In going into my match with him, and I'll have a recording of this where I can talk about I'll do the coverage of my plays. My plan was to seal it round 1 and essentially just blanket.
Mhm.
And that's not real dice advantage efficient for me, but I know he's taking 2 cards of his first 5, so like my 2 dice uh, that takes his 2 first 5 cards seemed
Seems pretty good.
okay.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, I was like, okay, I got my book set up, and I'm just gonna chump block it. I'm gonna take 2 from the overkill, and then I'm gonna kill it. I'm just gonna make sure I have a hard removal spell for it every turn,
Mhm.
because I think if he doesn't untap it, then a lot of the power of this deck goes away. But
Absolutely.
specifically, Chaos Gravity with an Iron Rhino in play is Chaos Gravity is a good card, but it's like hyper powerful if you have a 7 power dude in play. Because you
Right.
get to untap it and you get to like ruin their blocks.
And Odette ability just does the same thing as well, right? So you kind of get that always on board also if you can set it up.
The Echo ability,
Or the echo ability, yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's like a pseudo one, right? That one doesn't untap him, but it does like script their blocks.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting deck. Um, I think specifically had a very bad matchup against me, which is unfortunate for him, fortunate for me, but it was a great match. He's a great guy at it. Like always, I had a good time playing. So
Yep. Yep.
um, this
So
deck
let's
is a
talk
fun one to
about.
watch for sure. The rest of the tournament.
I do hope that we get a chance to see it played, either on stream or just through a video recording somewhere. But let's move on to Scorpy's deck because you're going to play Scorpy tonight or tomorrow.
Tomorrow night.
Excuse
Yep.
me. And this is a coal list with 3 ceremonial, 4 nature, and 3 time. So this is one of the time lists. So we're
This
getting a new coal here essentially with Foresight, Frostbite, Summon Frostback Bear, and Summon Turtle Guard. Bunch of little allies and some Hammer Knights. Standard Bearer seems pretty solid here. Couple of Root Armors, a single Stasis, 1 Accelerate, 2 Choke, 1 Close Combat, 3 Fester, 2 Molten Gold, 1 Nature's Wrath, 300 Blades, an Ice Trap, and a singular Summon Sleeping Widows. Um, this just looks like Cole good stuff, right? Like it's what you
Yeah,
expect to
I'm
see with
I'm
Cole.
interested to know like what the one of like there's like one of accelerate, one of close combat, like what those are for.
My guess would be the Turtle Guard. Turtle Guard,
Yeah, I guess it close.
Prospect Bear, or Hammer Knight would both be really solid because you could still play Root Armor Hammer Knight round 1, and then Close Combat only puts 1 damage on the Knight, right? So, because Close Combat places a wound. I learned that today, by the way. I should read this card more closely next time. So it's not deal a point of damage; it's deal a wound. So Root Armor doesn't protect
Right.
the close combat, but the uh, the rest of the list is just pretty standard stuff, right? So like you know,
Right. I don't think any of the cards in his deck are bad. I think they're all like good cards.
right?
Obviously he's after my own heart with his messengers.
Sure, yeah.
Uh, I'm just
So,
the number of accelerates is weird to me. It seems like
well, I
accelerate
was. What are the
specifically would
side
be
actions you would be doing in this list
well
anyway?
slash, right?
Sure,
Like
sure. Accelerate flashes. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. The Cole just like has
you
built
know
in
that thing
as
that
many
Cole
side actions
does
as you want.
every round, every turn of the game?
Yeah,
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 that's
yeah,
probably what it's
yeah.
for.
That's what it's for. Yeah, that
I
makes
mean, it
sense.
lets I guess uh
I feel like
you can
Cole's in
like
a lot
make a
of
turtle
trouble.
and still slash, I guess, off of it. But the thing about the accelerate to me that I think is weird is I think accelerate is good for slash as kind of like a surprise 2 damage.
Hmm.
Um, but 1 is a strange number, right? Like that, like when you have 1
Yeah,
accelerate, you think you're gonna first 5 it, or are you just like, because if you have 1 accelerate, at one point in the game you just like draw an accelerate, you're like, cool, I do an accelerate, I get to do 2 damage. It seems like that would be a higher number of them.
I agree with that statement. I also think that in this particular tournament where there's a bunch of big units being played, Cole's slash is less effective, right? Like
Right.
it's
I mean, he has 3 festers that it turns on.
that's true.
This
That
deck
does
is
turn on
really
faster.
cool, I think.
Yeah.
you know, I love me a Turtle Guard. I love me a Swift Messenger.
Absolutely.
I even played some Foresight. Like
Yeah. And I like
this,
Foresight with Cole. Like just giving
right?
Cole a six hand size each round is not terrible.
This is a cool deck that doesn't have to play an illusion dice because it's
Correct.
playing Foresight instead of an abundance.
Right. Yep. And I think that we might see more Cole decks switch to this kind of approach if Foresight proves to be good. So we'll see. I'm excited to see your match on this and hear how it
Yeah, I
goes.
think it's going
And
to be interesting. I I honestly haven't like put a lot of thought into it yet, but he's got 2 3s, which are like good against my 2 3s. Like
Mhm. All right. So let's move on. We're gonna go into my list now. Um, and this is the last Herald we'll be covering for the night. I'm not going to go back over all the Herald things that Herald does completely, but I'm going to have to talk about some of the Herald things. So when I built this list, there was a couple of things. One, I had a real question about like what is better, Sarasaurus Mount, Frostback Bear, or in which ready book is better? And what occurred to me in that answer, because they're very similar in dice spend. The Sarasaurus Mount is technically a little cheaper because it doesn't take the power die to play the book. Um, is that they're so similar that it really just comes down to the dependency of the allies in play. And I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, one of the things that I had the most trouble with in season one was not being able to necessarily bypass or get around opponents' blockers and still just like having ineffective attacks with 3 attack units. That's what the Shadowhounds did for me all through season one. And so Sarasaurus Mount and paired with Hunter's Mark from Herald specifically means that I can hunt units and still deal Phoenixborn damage. So it sort of builds each one of my Sarasaurus Mounts or Frostback Bears or whatever turns into essentially damage to the Phoenixborn. Now, obviously, Frostback Bear doesn't because it doesn't have the overkill, but you know what I'm saying. Now, I ended up in 3x Law of Domination because I don't traditionally plan on playing Sarasaurus Mount, Frostback Bear, and Lightbringer in a particular game. I plan on either the Sarasaurus Mount or the Lightbringer, and then the Law of Domination. Now, if you go back and watch my round one, I gave up the Law of Domination play and put a Frostback Bear down in round two just to create another unit so that I would create the advantage to go ahead and win at the top of round three.
right,
And
and Law of Domination doesn't actually take up your slot, so like you could do it a couple ways where like you play a Law of
absolutely,
Domination one round and then fill the slot with a book later, or the
absolutely,
reverse of that, like make your guy meditate your thing away and then play Law. Uh,
absolutely. So the reason for the 3x Law of Domination is specifically to use Hunter's Mark and try to fight Root Armored Knights. If my opponent puts out a Root Armored Knight and I haven't successfully taken care of other things on their battlefield, Law of Domination does nothing. It's kind of a dead card. But if I am able to set up the board appropriately, then I can Hunter's Mark and Law of Domination. And because the damage from Law of Domination can't be prevented, that means that in this list, it's worth for either my Sonic Swordsman or my Sarasaurus Mount, which is where I tend to want to be most of the time, it's worth 6 damage to a Root Armored Knight. And that's enough to kill it. And that's the reason it's there. So if I suspect a Root Armored Knight first round play, there's a
and
chance I might first round play a Law of Domination as well.
and even like even if you like say they have like a knight and a 1/1, like you can still play the Law of Domination
Mhm.
to get the root armor to turn off, right? Like it'll
Correct.
kill their 1/1. You can hunt their guy and attack, and it with the root armor turned off, you kill it for sure, right? Like
How do I kill the Root Armor?
you just kill the guy the root armor's on,
Sure, but I'm assuming the Root Armor's on the Knight.
right? So like
So,
if you have Law of Domination in play,
sure.
root armor has no text.
Right.
So they have a just a 3/5,
Oh,
and
that's
then
true.
you
I
can
see what
like
you're saying. I was just
attack
thinking
it
about the actual
with
combat component. Yeah, you're right. I again just hadn't considered that as a possible outcome. I was just really thinking about the fight mechanic of it.
right.
So
The
you're
fight
absolutely
mechanic
right. Yeah.
obviously is good, but in your deck specifically, the secondary thing, like you said, it's good against root root armor, and it's good against turtle, which we only seen one of in
Hmm.
all these lists. But
Absolutely. So, so anyways, that's why the Law of Domination was included in my list. It's tech to fight root armored knights, root armored snakes, that sort of thing if they showed up in the tournament. From an allies perspective, I run two polarity mages. I only have two alterations in play to play with here, but I'm very unlikely to first five any of these, which just generally means that they probably end up in my discard pile more than not, and so the two polarity mages give me that. Plus, they're a good mount target for Ceratosaurus mount if I play the Ceratosaurus. I run 3x Raptor Herder. I just have the battlefield for this, and if you watch my round one matchup on YouTube, you'll see exactly what happens when you have this many Raptor Herders. And then I've got 3x Shepherd of Lost Souls. That's so I can recur anything I need from this group of allies if they die. And then the 3x Sonic Swordsman because I think Sonic Swordsman with Herald is just super powerful.
the combination of
Just
swordsman and hunter's mark is very strong.
very strong,
Um,
and I just think it's a real way to control your opponent's board because you don't even have to mark the biggest target if you just want to exhaust the target and buy yourself some time. So, swordsman can do a variety of different attack patterns, and I just love that as a whole. I'm not necessarily always going to open with swordsman. It's sort of going to depend on matchups and what I plan to do. But again, 1x massive growth, that's to put on the Frostback Bear. That's also to be able to put on like a Raptor Herder or something small to get damage through if the board state allows for it. And then the root armor, the single root armor is just to have my own root armored knight because I think my root armored knights fight their root armored knights better, just in general.
yeah, this deck just
Um,
looks very similar to the last Herald deck we saw. You know,
yeah,
like the cards in this deck and the previous deck and uh Carl's Herald list are all very overlap.
right, absolutely. I do run 3x Meteor, which I don't think any of the other Heralds lists are running right now. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, if I'm playing Ceratosaurus Mount, I get a lot of value from a late round Meteor, where I've exhausted a Ceratosaurus or a couple of Cerasauruses if I'm not lucky, and I'm able to essentially reset my board and make a bunch of Raptor Herders again, or Shepherds, or whatever it may be, to recur into rebuilding my board after my opponent's basically out of dice and out of tempo. And that's what I run the Meteors specifically for. The Summon Shining Hydras are just nice combo cards with Law of Domination if my opponent picks a small unit. Like if they pick like one of their 1/1s or 2/2s, like I can just choose the Hydra, do a little damage off the Law play, and then start making heads to make the Hydra get better. And then 2x Consume Soul. I'm still not sold on this card, even being necessary with Herald, but it's reasonably good enough to get back your Hunter's Mark.
You have
That
enough
it's
attackers that you can hunter's mark twice in a turn. I mean, if that's when it's good,
That's what
right?
it's about. Yeah, that's absolutely what it's about. So for me, that was the choice. And then just running the 3x crescendos just gives me that opportunity with the swordsman. If my opponent is able to sort of out tempo me somehow, I can take a smaller unit with the swordsman, crescendo a bigger unit who may be marked potentially, and exhaust a third unit out. And so I kind of get the kind of 2 for 3 exchange. Obviously, I have to discard a card, so it's not exactly that, but that's why I chose the crescendos in this list. And that's really what it's all about. Like I just was thinking about things that I thought I was going to have to fight. I think it's particularly weak to your list, Neil, that we're going to go over next here. And I
I mean,
don't.
you got three
I think.
meteors. Like it's like
Yeah,
the
I mean,
best
but I
card
don't think
against me.
I'm not sure I'm on that board on that plan, but it may be. I don't know. We've not played it with the 3 meteor version. I've just not had 3 meteors. So in my version. So it's just something we'd have to see how that all sorts
I
out.
don't know
But
that you're like favored or anything. It just I think meteor is probably the number one best card against my deck.
sure,
And
and it does work well if I play a root armored swordsman and can get it to stick. I can meteor and still keep my swordsman around, which is also nice. But yeah, I just don't know if I agree completely with it being a situation where it's the best card to play against you. I think the best card to play against you isn't very present in this tournament, and that's Neil. So
Well, I
Um,
played against a deck in round one that had 3 Neils and won.
sure.
Uh,
Yeah. I think yeah. Anyways, okay. So let's move on to your list. Not much more I want to talk about on my list. Obviously, if anybody has questions on my list, I'm happy to answer them. Just feel free to ping me or DM me or say something in chat. But let's move on to your Aerodel list. You're the one of Aerodel. This is the 4-book Aerodel archetype that we have been playing on stream for the
right.
better
I've
part of
played
almost a month now.
this deck, like 38 cards of this deck on stream a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Um, I I added a Mist Typhoon and I added a Seal because I was worried about Fallen.
sure.
That's what both those cards are for.
Yeah. And then you
Though
ended
the
up
Seal was really good in round one, even though I didn't play against Fallen. Um, so yeah, I mean, this deck has no allies in it.
Nope.
Functions purely on ready spell units,
Yep.
and I was unhappy to see a bunch of heralds because like my deck revolves around a bunch of unit guards,
Right.
and Hunter's Mark is good against that. So I don't know what that's going to be like, but we're going to find out eventually, I assume.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure you'll get paired up with a Herald eventually. Um,
yeah. So my
don't know who
books
that'll be.
are.
Because Cam, you are legendary, man. That's what it's all about. um, yeah, I obviously I think that I think 4-book Airedale is very powerful. Um, yeah, Mad Neil does hit your own units, but you have to essentially play into this idea that you're gonna exhaust their board out at an appropriate time, and then you're gonna make a unit that they can't deal with, or a couple of units they can't deal with through the remainder of the round. So like a top of round Neil, where you still got battlefield space and your opponent has limited battlefield space, puts you in a very good position to be in the driver's seat for that round
yeah,
to just do a bunch of unblockable damage.
Neil is a
Um,
just a very powerful card.
mhm.
Um,
But you're right, Matt. If you're like you just have a grip full of units on your board and your board is full too, and you top around Neil into them, like it's not doing anything. That's it. That's like the worst way to play Neil. You want to be sort of set up in a way where your opponent's ahead, and then you stop them from being ahead essentially because you blank their board for the turn. Now that means you have to get your board position back in check, right, before the end of that round, or you're they're going to get all those units and attack you, and that's a thing. So, we'll talk about Neil as a card probably on stream or on a show sometime because it is I think it's kind of a difficult card to play in many situations, and you have to just recognize when it's good and recognize when it's not helping you. So I like all of your units in this list, Neil. I was actually surprised you didn't go with the Turtle Guard version. Uh,
um, so the reason for that is mostly that I just like wanted to play Fester and some illusion cards.
sure,
Um, I believe that Turtle Guard is a better unit than False Demon or Butterfly Monk.
right,
And a better book than those two books, but I just like I wanted to be able to play Fester and Fade Away.
sure.
Uh,
Both very solid cards in a field of knights.
right.
Like
Yeah.
because of Aradel's onboard Water Blast, you can spend 1 dice to essentially ping for 1, but that's all you need in order to turn Fester on to shut down a Root Armored Knight. So it's a very efficient 2 dice play to take care of a 4 dice unit. So I do like that
Yeah.
as
This
a whole.
so obviously I started with Frostback Bear in every version.
Mhm.
Only one
And
book.
Gilder, I would assume so. Gilder on that as well.
Right. I think Gilder's great. Obviously, like I only have one card in the pile besides Gilder that uses that charm dice,
Sure.
uh, which is the seal I added.
Right.
That's how good I think Gilder is. Because the combination of main action Gilder book plus Aerodel kills Frostback Bear, and
And the Sarah Source mounts.
yeah, like just I think being able to one turn kill 3 toughness units, and you get an O2 uh, unit guard, which is fine.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, it's not nothing. It's not a ton, but it's better than 0.
Sure.
Though I would do that play even with both Guilders in play already for just the ping.
Sure.
And then I wanted another 2-power guy, so I picked False Demon. There are 2 False Demon books because uh, there's only 2 False Demons in the pile, so I don't think that you should have a third one. But
Yeah.
sometimes
It would be. It would,
I just want to be able to make as many dudes as possible.
sure.
Um, and maybe that should be a second Frostback Bear book instead of a second False Demon book. I'm not sure. I was going back and forth on that. Because
I
it's
think it's an
essentially there
interesting
as,
decision.
yeah, ultimately it came down to I think the Frostback Bears survive more, so I'm less likely to have the second one in the tank to fire off.
Right.
And then finally Butterfly Monk. I wanted the 4th book. I wanted to be a unit guard, and I wanted it. Essentially, this was just the best one on color in that
Yeah.
slot because I wanted it to be 1 dice.
Absolutely.
So like any of the 2 ones or whatever, they weren't like good enough. Uh,
Mhm.
Butterfly Monk does some cool stuff. Which did we ever find out how it interacts with Meteor?
Yes. So the way it interacts with Meteor is the uh, the first meteor, like the player playing the meteor, gets to choose the resolution order of the simultaneous effects.
Okay.
So if you play meteor and you have a butterfly monk and a frostback bear on the field, the player can choose to do 1 damage to the butterfly monk first before the 1 damage from the first hit from meteor is applied to the frostback bear. So then the men won't be able to
So
target the frostback bear because the
the
men will
death
interrupt the
trigger
resolution of
in general in the game, triggers can actually interrupt like one effect. Like like
correct.
one sentence of a thing can be cut half off. Like
Right.
it's not uh well, that's too bad, but I still think
So
Butterfly Monk
unfor-
has been better than I even thought it was going to be because
I've been playing a lot of Butterfly Monk, particularly in Ashteki. It seems very powerful.
I
Um,
don't know about very
and
powerful. It's just solid. Like it's just like a
well,
good guy to
yeah,
have. And like
yeah, sure,
in a deck like this, just having a 1/1 left over is good because you can just like always ding in there onto one of their guys that's tapped out because you always have more
right,
dudes than them.
right,
Um,
for sure. So
so the whole deck is just like I stick these things so I always have access to units, and then I can play an extremely reactive game where I always have a thing on board to do that's good that essentially is
mhm,
just like advancing my board by summoning one of these units, and then I can wait until you spend your dice and your cards and just like use my efficient removal on them.
absolutely,
And that's what I
yeah,
did against Red King in round 1. You know, he committed 5 dice to his 7/4. He attacked me with it. I blocked with Gilder because you actually can't block it with Butterfly Monk, but you can block it with Gilder, which is kind of funny.
mhm,
Um, Take 2 from trample and then just do whatever to it. I molten gold at 1
right,
turn, I festered at 1 turn, and I 2 shadowed at 1 time.
yep,
And specifically, several rounds in a row, I use the uh, illusion power dice to turn down his snake so he couldn't golden veil.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, illusion power is highly underrated for stopping reactions like that when you've got proactive plans like, uh, to your point, Fester or well, you can't do the two shadows illusion play, unfortunately, because two
right.
shadows is not action. But Festers or
Yeah, I did it.
Gilder and Airedale or
I turned
whatever.
his snakes down, I molten gold at 1 turn. I turned his snake down, I festered at 1 turn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've made those
it's just
kinds of.
all removal spells. And then I have Vanish that I'm not sold on.
Mhm,
But I felt like I had to play 2 because I was never going to first 5 it, and then I always wanted like exactly 1 on the last turn of the game against
mhm,
the Molten Gold decks. Um, and then Particle Shield, which I just think is a great card. And in my
yeah,
round 1 match, I'll talk to you about how because I never do anything with the cards in my hand. I forgot my draw step. And my false demon got killed, but I actually could have particle shielded it if I had drawn my cards.
Oh my god.
One anyway,
Okay.
doesn't matter.
One anyway. Doesn't matter. Okay. All right,
But
let's move on to Waves deck. I'm not sure if Waves is with us tonight, but even if he's not, let's talk about his deck. I always like when the guy that's running the deck is here to chat about it. But Jericho deck again. So this is one of the Jericho lists: double ceremonial, 4 divine, and 4 turtles. So 4 time dice. We got one of Sacred Ground, 2x summon Time Hopper, 2x summon Winged Lioness, 10 allies here, 3 Holy Knights, 2 Reaping Angels, 1 Shield Mage, 3 Standard Bearer, 1 Swift Messenger. I'm a big fan of Reaping Angel. I think this card is really good. Even if you don't use the secondary clause of like removing the ally from the game to heal yourself, I just think getting an ally into the discard pile when there's so many ways to recur allies now, just solid. So 2x
yeah,
stasis.
it was a card that got a lot worse, I think, after the reprint. But
Sure.
um,
I do agree that it's not as good as it was in 1.0, but I still think it's pretty solid here.
because it used to heal you for like 3.
Right,
Because it was
exactly.
based on the recovery value of the unit that you put in.
Yeah. So 3x accelerate, 3x blank, 3x meteor, just board sweeps and the blinks. I kind of like the blink, accelerate, blink, meteor combo is a thing you could do. Like you could blink your own unit out of the way, meteor the board, bring your unit back.
You
That's
actually
kind of
can't. Oh, with accelerate you can do that, right?
right. Yeah, with
Uh,
accelerate, I think that's a thing that you might be a play line that could happen.
right. This deck has
Um,
some cute accelerate things because accelerate and meteor are so powerful together.
mhm.
Because you get to like play accelerate, cast meteor off the dice you fixed, and
Right.
then you can do any number
Have
of things like
one more side action left. Yep.
make two. You can make 2/1/1s, like
Well, you can't
assuming
do
you have the
that
focus
because
time hopper.
you can't because if you meteor the board, your time hopper's dead. So you'd
Oh,
have
right.
to
Because so you can only make 1/1/1.
right. That's why I think the best play for it is to blink away your like Holy Knight, and then allow your Holy Knight to come back in fully
It's
healed.
also the accelerate sacred ground meteor is extremely powerful.
Yeah, that is also very strong for sure at
um,
saving sort of your bigger units.
well, it saves
It's
like
got the one
all your units because you accelerate, you activate sacred ground, you meteor for 2,
sure.
and then you're like crushing your
All your
opponent,
units.
right? Like
Potentially, yeah,
you
yeah.
essentially get to pick
Um,
your meteor too off of the accelerate because it fixes the dice.
correct. And then Angelic Rescue is a good savior to opponent damage, and then I just like the 3x slash like with a bunch of time hoppers running around because you can just
Well,
you can throw tokens all over the place and let flash
Flash
strikes be
Strike is
turned on.
specifically extremely good on Lioness. Uh,
Absolutely, yeah. If you can put a token on Lioness and get an attack off, flash strike's insane. So
yeah, this deck
um,
has a lot of cool things going on for sure.
I agree. So I'm curious to see how Waves continues to do through the tournament. Up to this point, I think he won his round one matchup. Um,
He must really value the Reaping Angel
I think it's better than you
because,
think it is.
well, I don't think it's terrible. But what's interesting to
No,
me is he
he
doesn't
lost
have
to Impossible
another
Drone.
ceremonial card in his pile, right?
Uh,
That's the only one.
Um, yes, that is the only one.
So the only thing he has is ceremonial side action, which obviously I think is very, very good. And the
Sacred
Reaping
Ground doesn't cost
Angels.
ceremonial or Sacred Ground doesn't cost a ceremonial dice to play though, right? Am I crazy on that?
What?
Sacred Ground?
No.
What's the ceremonial side action? Oh, so you're just talking about dice power. Sorry.
Right, dice power.
Okay, I was like, what side action are you talking about? Dice power, dice power. Got it now. Picking up what you're putting down, Neil.
Yeah, those are his only 2 possible actions
Yeah,
off of the ceremonial dice. Which I
yeah.
mean, they're a combo with each other because you can like pitch to the Reaping Angel and then ceremonial it back, and
Mhm.
that's like again, accelerate is good there to fix those ceremonial dice. Because you could actually like in one turn you could accelerate main action Reaping Angel for Shield Mage, side action, get the shield mage back, side action, play shield mage.
Yeah. No,
This deck has
that's
lots of
absolutely
cool
correct.
stuff, man. This deck is
It's got a lot.
awesome.
It's got a lot of neat lines. I don't. Unfortunately, he lost round one to who did he lose to? He lost to my opponent, Impossible German, who I'm playing tonight. So we'll get into German's list here. It's a little further down because he was one of the late. So we're out of the alphabetized list. So these are the late
I'm gonna move
lineups that
forward
happen.
because we are running out of time here before
I
your
know
match.
coming
So
up.
Philly Cheese, who's in the last match, playing Xander. I like Xander. I still think he's one of the very best. Um,
I agree, Cam. That it is an interesting potential with James, as a shell. So go ahead, Neil. Sorry, I just wanted to comment to
yeah.
Cam there.
So like I said, I think Xander's a very powerful one.
Mhm.
This list only has the 3 ready spells, right? So I think it's usually
Right.
going to be first 5 all 3 of these, or first 5 everything but the magic siphon.
Right.
In matchups he doesn't think he needs a fixing for, but I don't know.
So I want to make a comment here. I think Magic Siphon is a great card, and I think this is fine as a one of. I'm not sure. It's interesting to hear guys like Matt and others talk about like how if my opponent's first fighting a Magic Siphon, they think they're probably winning that game. And it makes me wonder if it has to be a 3 of card in general. But obviously Philly is a strong player, so we can potentially see that how that shakes down as we go through the tournament. I mean, he was able to win against No Such Method. It was a Xandermere, the deck right next door to it here, in round one. So maybe that made a difference. It was just like Magic Siphons everywhere.
These decks are wildly different, though. Like
Yeah,
just because they have the
yeah,
same Phoenix form, they're wildly different.
sure.
So talking about uh, Philly Cheese's deck, I mean, I like it. Frostback and Salamander Monk both are, very strong
Hmm.
books. Hammer Knight, Raptor Herder, Sonic Swordsman. This seems like a deck that really wants Scald.
I agree. I think it's
But
woefully missing the Scald, even if you couldn't first 5 it.
but the other cards are all just good.
Yeah, Cam, that is what happened because that's what Carl mentioned on the commentary was that Brian played the Siphon and Matt thought he was going to be ahead. That's one instance of that, and I've had some other additional conversations with Carl and company about Magic Siphon because of my Hounds list. So, anyways, let's keep moving on here.
So this is just like good card pile, right?
Correct.
Um,
And
it's a little
I
low
think
on
that
allies compared to the other good card piles, but because this is a Xander deck, uh, that's not always true.
right.
And he has one Divine Dice, which looks like it is for Sonic Swordsman
3 for
and
Swordsman
the
and
Phoenix Born ability, and that's it.
yep, yep. And I think
Um,
that's probably could be a gate. Honestly, that's a problem because I feel like Swordsman's the card you would want to get back a lot. And
yeah, in this
obviously,
list, I think Hammer Knight and Swordsman are almost identical.
sure, that's
Like
true.
it's just like a 3/4 that you don't want your guys to die to. So
Hmm.
if he has a Sonic, he can spend the dice on the Sonic and not use the Phoenix Born power. If he doesn't have the Sonic, he can get the Hammer Knight back and play it, right?
Sure.
And obviously, like Raptor Herder's fine. I'm I think the Raptor Herder's a little strange in the deck with 3 Earthquakes. I mean, obviously
Well,
you have
he's got, just to be fair, he's got 9 nature cards in total on the list. So 4 nature feels a little heavy-handed with 9 nature cards total. So I think this is just possibly a dice like where you could make a second divine dice just to have the ability to still recur swordsman and play swordsman.
right. It's just
Um,
like the more nature dice you can feasibly play, the better your deck probably is, just because
sure.
nature power action is so strong. Um,
It would look very similar to No Such Methods at that point, right? Like it would have a very similar dice spread to just swap illusion for ceremonial here. So
right, but
from
again,
a
the
dice
decks are
spread
not
perspective.
similar at all.
No. I agree. I agree.
So
I'm just talking about from a dice spread perspective.
I think the 3 Raptor Herders in the 3 Nature's Wrath 3 Earthquake deck is a little weird. Um, but otherwise, like, this is just like solid stuff. And Xander is a solid Phoenixborn, and Earthquake is busted.
Yeah,
So,
I think this would be a deck that would benefit greatly from that Frostback Bear being a Ceratosaurus mount. This is the deck where I think Ceratosaurus
well,
mount would be better.
that would be a reason to switch a dice then, because you couldn't play Ceratosaurus off 1 Divine that way.
Sure.
Um,
I agree, but I'm just saying from a perspective of, to your point, the Earthquakes and Nature's Wraths don't kill your Ceratosaurus mounts, and if your Ceratosaurus mount dies, you still get your Raptor Herder back for free that way. So I think that those kinds of things are decisions that have to be made,
but
and I obviously didn't test this list, so maybe he tried it and didn't feel it was worth it. So
I don't know.
um,
Everything in this deck seems fine. The Strange Copy is funny. The Strange
I
Copy
like
makes the Raptor Herders better.
I like
Uh,
a single copy of Strange Copy for a variety of things that are coming in, like that opponents play. So I think this is a cool one of in the deck for sure. So let's move on to no such though, so we can keep getting through this list, and that way we
so
can finish it
so
tonight.
this deck is really funny. This is obviously like a slow mill deck.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it has the opportunity to win with damage because it has some swordsmen and raptor herders and stuff.
Right.
Um, but I mean, with the 3 abundance, 3 magic siphon, 2 memorialize, uh,
Yeah.
2 gates thrown open. This to me looks like it's a slow mill deck where it has the mill functions of abundance, magic siphon, and then it also has like the refill functions of revival pact and memorialize.
Right.
Um, so I bet that this deck takes a long time to win, but it is
Yeah.
cool. Like
Yeah.
I like the Pain Shamans. I think Pain Shaman is a card that's better than how much it's played.
Sure.
Um,
It is a good
Frostfang,
2 cost unit. I like Frostfang here.
yeah, Frostfang, even though it's 1 toughness, is still good with Earthquakes in your deck.
Mhm.
Um,
um,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
this deck is
I,
really interesting, and this is one that I would like to watch because it kind of has like this like weird toolbox of allies also for the Xander ability, because like the Hollow fixes dice, the Pain Shaman pings and does a damage, the Anchornaut does a damage.
well, Cam, if you're feeling froggy about recording it, you can certainly let me know, and I'll give you an upload box to put the video in, and we will cover it on stream, or we'll cover it on YouTube if you want to put it up. So we would definitely like to see No Such Methods deck, and obviously we'd love to watch your deck as well. So let us know if you can put that
Yeah.
together.
It looks cool to me. I
It does
just
look cool.
I I tried to play a deck with the memorialized revival pack nonsense a couple times. Never really
Yeah,
worked out right, but this one is a lot less greedy than the ones that I tried to play.
absolutely. So yeah, no, I think it's great.
So what
So
we
all right,
got?
let's move on to Bill's deck. Bill is not happy with this deck. If you've been following along on the Discord channel and you're in the tournament, you'll know that Bill says he just wishes he would have brought a different deck altogether. He didn't deeply test this deck. Won round one and then lost round two to Brian B. But he's got a coal shell here, very similar to Matt Bauer's coal shell. A few
Right.
differences in unit choices, but for the most part, very similar. This is just doing all the cold stuff that you would expect a cold deck to do, right? Like, I mean, the power throughs are kind of cheeky. You don't see those a lot in coal lists.
You just don't
And
see those a lot, period.
right. And I think this card is probably okay. I almost played this card in my Herald list just because it would allow my bears to do overkill damage, and I thought that might be
It's like a bad way to do 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to a player.
right. Yeah.
And it's that's in its worst mode, um, where it's this really situational ping.
Right.
Uh, if you attack with it 2 times, it's probably worth it, right?
Right.
Like it's probably worth the
Yeah.
investment. And since it's a side action, I believe it's a side action anyway.
It is a side action to play. Yeah.
Since it's a side action, you always get it once,
Hmm.
barring like a stasis or something. Um,
So if you can play it late enough in the round and then get top of round swing with it again, you probably got your value out of it.
Right.
And,
And
and I think
that's
I like that paired very nicely with a Celestial Knight, right? To turn the 4/3 armored, armored one on. I think that's kind of neat.
yeah,
But
it's good on like any of his dudes. Like it's even
right,
fine on like Lightbringer if you trade the Lightbringer up.
right, absolutely.
So I think it's okay. It's a card that like I've put in lists and then always taken out when I was like shaving back down.
Right,
But this is just like coal control, right? Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
and
So,
it has like a cool little suite of Ceratosaurus allies.
mhm.
Um,
Which is very similar, if you remember, to I think it was my round one Cole opponent in season one when I was playing the Hounds list. They've just played Ceratosaurus Cole.
right.
Um, there's a lot of value in that Ceratosaurus mount with Cole in particular, and there's a lot of pressure that Cole can put on things because, like, you can Ceratosaurus attack into a knight, even if you trade your Ceratosaurus and you get your ally back, like Cole can just then slash into killing that knight. I mean, there's just a lot of interaction that way that makes those
Yeah,
Cerasauruses trade well.
Slash as an ability makes combat very easy for you. Like,
Right.
um, but yeah, I think in general, this deck, like you said, it looks very much like Matt's deck.
Hmm.
I think it's a little heavy on like crappy little guys.
Yep.
He has a lot of 1/1s and
And
0/1s.
that and that
Um,
will be a problem for a field with meteors and a field with
there are a lot
nature's
of
wrath.
Nature's Rats in this
Yep.
tournament too.
I think that's going to make this
But
deck have a hard time against some of those matchups.
but I think Celestial Knight is okay. Or wait,
Hmm.
Celestial Knight's a good one. Never mind. Celestial Knight I think is very good. Um, so
It's the 3/3 armored one.
right, I think it's very good. I was getting mixed up with Holy Knight,
Hmm.
uh, which I think is okay, but not great.
Right.
Um, but this deck has 3 Call Upon the Realms, which
Right.
I really don't like in Cole
Well,
because
I've had players talk about that with Cole for a couple of reasons. One, most likely they're not going to play Call Upon the Realms, and so if they need it, then they have it, and if they don't need it, then what they get out of it is a free slash damage from the card. So it's not
right,
literally blanking Cole.
but any card is a free slash damage, so I'd rather have a
Sure.
card in my list that is either like 3 1-ofs for specific matchups or an action card because
Sure.
I don't want to discard a card from my hand as Cole when it could be a slash unless it's something better than a slash. And I think Call
Right.
Upon the Realms is not better than a slash majority of the time.
Sure.
Um, so
Okay. Should we?
that's something that I disagree with, but overall I think it looks fine. It has
So let's
powerful
move
cards
on.
in it.
Let's talk about Dinkins deck because we're
How many
sorry
more of
we're
these we
moving
got? Are
so
we is
fast
there
here.
like a
We
whole other
got
page? Oh, there's 3 left after
we've
this.
got three left after this one. Yep.
Okay.
So Dinkins got a Noah deck. This is the first Noah deck in the tournament, I think.
No, there was one other because we talked about how
Oh,
handsome
you're
he
right.
is.
Mike Kankowski. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This is a Lightbringer Masked Wolf Mist Spirit deck. So this is just going with this really wide, trying to leverage Noah's battlefield to advantage using Immortal Commander, Light Swordsman. So a bunch of side action stuff. You've seen me play shells like this on stream if you're a follower of the stream. I think we all know that some of the problems that Noah runs into is that these units are just like wet paper towels. And so they just fold over on anything that they run
You really
into.
have to. I like the particle shields with his many
Mhm.
little guys, but you really have to set your turn up very good. There's a lot of things
Right,
that can go wrong. Um,
right, and
because you essentially
that's what it
need
is.
to like make a few guys and then have the big like multiple side action round. Uh,
I think honestly, the best version of Noah has got to be one with accelerate, where you can accelerate into a couple of masked wolves with extra side actions into like immortal commanders. But the again that play alone is very difficult to set up, right? Because you have to have a couple of masked wolf books on board. You have to
yeah,
have the accelerate, have the immortal commander. You have to have all these kinds of pieces in place to make that
I do
work.
like the shadow guards in this pile.
I love Shadowguard. I think it's one of the best illusion units in the game. And I like him with Noah because again, same thing. Like we can change the board presence on your opponent's turn, which changes the ability for you to then make a bunch of side actions into an aggressive attack shell. That's what feels like Noah wants to do. It just seems so hard to actually get a game closed out that way.
Right.
That
So this, and it has the three Nature's Wrath, three Meteors to like, I assume clean up its own board and go again.
right.
Because this deck is all one things, right?
Hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
And it's got the 3x
So
gate
I
thrown
guess
open.
Shadow Guard is two things.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
the
everything
uh
else
the
is literally
Mist
a one dice card. Like literally
well, the Mist
everything except
Spirit's
for Shadow
technically a
Guard.
two.
What?
Mist Spirit's technically a two.
It's just two
And
one dice cards.
sure, right. But
Because you have the
but
option
it's
to do it
also
for
two.
one. Like it's not
That's
like
right.
you're forced to do it for two.
That's right. So, and again, Particle Shield's a sweet answer card to opponent's Nature's Wrath on, but I'm not sure what you Particle Shield consistently here. Maybe your own Shadow Guard. That's about the best unit I could see you'd want a Particle Shield.
I mean, you're just gonna
Um,
if you're set up to do your big attack, you're just gonna save whatever guy you can and then untap and like take your turn and try and kill like try and get the big swing
right,
in. So it doesn't really
right,
matter what it is. I think most of the time it's gonna be a 2-1 because it Mass Wolf is like the most common unit to be in play probably in this deck.
sure,
But obviously you would choose to save Shadow Guard over that. But Shadow Guard
right,
usually will have attacked before they have a chance to Nature's Wrath it because it'll come into play the sneaky
absolutely.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I wish Dinkin, again, I'm hoping I say your name correctly, Dinkin, a lot of luck with this deck. I love Noah, and I think Noah's ability is very good on his card. I think the Masked Wolf is potentially a trap with Noah. And if somebody can make that work, I mean, definitely more power to them because obviously I think that's good for the game if we can have this sort of surprise swing potential with Noah that you know isn't on the board and set up right away. So again, just more power to you on this. I think this is a pretty standard Noah like surprise attacker list, and those have been, in my experience, very difficult to actually get to a point that they can close the game out.
Right. So
So
I'm moving down here so we can get maybe through these. We have
yep,
another Echo list.
yep.
This list I looked at and I like a lot. Um,
This has got to be one right after your own heart with the Mirror Spirits, right?
right. I think that Summon Mirror Spirit as a main action with the Echo side action is really good.
And I think it's really good then, even if you end up spending your status tokens off of Focused Mirror Spirits to exhaust your opponent's board out, you still have the like surprise explosive growth to make a Mirror Spirit into a 4 attacker again. So you actually get like the value out of being able to attack into into their face directly because their whole board is exhausted. So
And this is an excellent Neil deck. We
very
talked
much
about the
so.
power of Neil earlier. Has a lot of the same units that we've seen in a lot of these other decks.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, Donut
but
Dog for sure, Cam. And I think this is a list that you have to be on the lookout for if you're playing against it because you really can't afford to commit yourself to a large battlefield because that's just prime Neil territory, and you can't commit yourself to spending your ready spells early against it. You have to sort of slow play it to advantage, and we'll see how it works out. I mean, Doctor is a good player as well, and um, you know, he got unfortunately paired round one with Chaos Monkey, and Chaos Monkey's a solid player, and he got beat against Chaos Monkey, and then he got paired against Brian B in round two, and Brian B was able to take him down in round two. So, you know, those are some pretty tough seeds to draw round one and round two, and that does make things a little tricky for this list moving forward to see itself getting into the top, but he
yeah,
could win out and then just on breakers make top eight.
I
So
have found in general that Mirror Spirit is like almost there, but not quite good enough. But I
yeah,
do love it. Like
yep,
this deck is really cool.
I agree. I think it's neat.
This is like the third deck in a row that has the 3 call upon the realms, and I just don't know how I feel about that.
Yep, that's fair. That's fair. I mean I think Call Upon the Realms is a great card if you suspect a lot of mill, so that you can sort of play the long game. And this deck is probably playing long already, so it just gives you the opportunity to make 3 dice off of 1 card instead of making 3 dice off of 3 cards. And that might be the difference maker in a mill matchup, but hard to say, right? Hard to say. So I would have to see that. I'm with you. I'm not sold on Call Upon the Realms yet. I have tried it a few times. I've never been really excited about ever playing it, and but maybe I'm just completely misevaluating it.
And
All
It
right.
seems actively bad to me, but
So let's talk about Warder's list here. He's got Koji. This is the lone Koji.
this is like the
Um,
Koji precon.
Kind of, yeah, right. It's basically mostly the Koji cards that came in the precon.
I mean, it's not obviously it's not exactly the Koji precon, but it
Right. We've got the Guild Link, which I think Koji with Guild Link is great. I think that's the best use of Koji is to put a Guild Link counter out.
Right.
You've got the Creepers, which are also an interesting card. I mean, I think Creepers are slow enough that good decks have the ability to deal with the seed because you really don't care about the 2/1, right? It's how you deal with the
Right.
seed.
The
So you
2/1 by
kill-
itself is bad. Like,
Right.
because you can get a 2/1 for one dice a ton of places. 2/1
Right.
for two class dice is a little awkward.
And so what it really boils down to is if your opponent proactively kills the 2/1, it means that they have a proactive plan for dealing with the seedling and whatever you want to do with it. And it's really hard to adequately manage that because the 2/1 is so side action killable. Yeah, I agree with Cam on this. The one thing that Call's good for is turning anything that needs a power side, as a side action, and
if
it also
that's
allows
your
you to
goal, you should
delay
just play
for
Foresight
animation.
now. And you always have a main action to punt with.
Nah, that's true. Or frost. I mean, frostbite costs you a die though. So, anyways, let's get back on Koji just because we're running out of time before the match here. The rest of this deck is pretty standard Koji stuff. I mean, I don't know how I feel about Jungle Warrior as a whole. It's an interesting card.
And the Sleeping Bear is a little. I mean, I guess it's good with Seeds of Aggression.
I like Sleeping Bear with seeds.
And
I think that's a
does
fine.
Lick Wounds untap it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, then it's just a refresh, but
yeah,
you get the 4/4, I guess.
I mean, I will admit that when I've built some decks, I've looked at Jungle Warrior and considered playing it because it's a 2 dice 2/2, and the last orders is not completely irrelevant. I mean, you can spend one basic to remove an exhaustion token so you can refresh another unit, and then the inheritance is not terrible where you can place a status token on another unit. It doesn't feel like it does much in this deck, but I suppose you could throw it on the Squall Stallion.
The creepers need counters too. That's the thing.
Yeah,
right?
I know, but I think the creeper is going to die before the Jungle Warrior all day today and twice on Sunday.
Well, the 2/1 will. The seed, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, again, you can go watch my round 1 matchup and how I dealt with them in a Jericho list, which I think is a much faster way of bringing a focus creeper online. So anyways, I think that it's I think Koji is cool. I think that Lick Wounds is a reasonably good card as a loyalty card. I think that Creepers and Stallions are just not fast enough in this meta right now.
Right. I mean, he has the explosive growth, so that's a way to eke out some power out of your guys. But
sure,
yeah, it's his guys that are going to win him the game are a lot of work.
Right.
Even his allies like Huntmaster. I guess Huntmaster is good by itself, but Jungle Warrior and Ironworker are just okay, and Sleeping Bear is work. As well as obviously Squall Stallion and Indigo Creeper are work to get going.
He got paired up with Problem and lost round 1. He's now paired up round 2 with where is he? Mike Jankowski. So that'll be a chance to see how that Noah list comes out here with Mike against the Koji list. But let's move on to Impossible German. We got 5 minutes here. I think we can get it done.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can. So Impossible German is my opponent for tonight.
Okay.
This is a Xander list. It's 3 ceremonial, 3 nature, 2 divine, and 2 sympathy. So this has got the double divine we were sort of talking about. Prospect Bear, Lightbringer, and Salamander Monk seem like the ready spell board he's going to want to set up over and over and over again, which I think is fine.
Right. Those are all fine books.
Correct. Yep. And then he's got 3x Fire Archer, 2x Flute Mage, which is I believe the untap. Is that the untap Flute Mage? Yeah.
Which is,
I think
it's interesting. He's got Sleeping Bear and Hammer Knight to do with it, I guess.
Right. So Hammer Knight, Raptor Herder, Sleeping Bear. He's got the 1x Root Armor. So I mean, it's very easy to see the first five be Frostbite Bear, Lightbringer, Salamander, Monk, Hammer Knight, and Root Armor. If he's listening and decides to switch it up on me, great. You could also see him switch that Hammer Knight over to summon Archosaurus mount with a Root Armor. That's an interesting play that could be very powerful in some ways.
This is just like classic mid-rangey stuff, right? He's got
correct.
crescendos. He's got the earthquakes, obviously, that are great.
Right. Bloodchains, Earthquake, Fester, Summon Archosaurus mounts, Crescendos, and Ice Traps.
So this is like Knights plus removal deck.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a big ally. This is what I just call a big ally shell with a reasonably good set of ready spells.
Yeah, and he has the biggest one, the Archosaur.
Right.
Which is fancy, you know.
I think that it's interesting for me from a first five decision perspective because, you know, I have to guess whether or not he's going to first five an Ice Trap. He could, right, as a one of here. He may swap the Ice Trap for the Root Armor. You know, I don't know if that matters. It matters if I decided to set up the Ceratosaurus over the Frostback Bear. I'm just not sure if I would. So that's where I'm kind of sitting at when I play against it right now tonight. Obviously, Fester is going to be really good. Earthquake will be fine.
Right. I mean, you're not going to have Root Armored everything, so Root Armor is going to kill something. Like every time he draws it.
Yeah. So, you know, I like the Earthquake as a way to take away a big unit and swipe the small units off the board. But, you know, it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting matchup. I think it'll be very swingy. There'll be a lot of tempo changes. He technically has a better book lineup in general just because of the Salamander Monk, but you know, I have more nature dice, so I think I can pressure bad Earthquake plays to killing his own monks. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. You know, I look at this list and I think we're just going to have two big lists that are going to smack each other around a little bit, and it's going to come down to the first five decision is going to be really key here, and then after that, it's going to come down to who draws better into round 2, 3, and 4 and beyond from a allies perspective, because we have a very similar ally count as well. I would argue his allies are probably slightly better than mine, just in general, just because of the Sleeping Bear.
Well, I think Sleeping Bear is the worst of his allies, and worse than all the allies in your deck, because it comes into play tapped. But
sure. Like, but because of the Flute Mage, there's a chance he can make that bear do something. So
yeah, but then he just has like a 4 dice 4/4. Is that better than your 3 dice 3/4? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I just don't know. So we'll see how it all plays out. And
yeah, Cam, you're right. Because of the number of nature dice he has, like he can't have all those things you said.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So if he plays Frostback Bear, that's 2 of his dice. He can only play one other nature, so he'd only have room for the Root Armor or the Ice Trap at that point. As a one of. He could still play the Archosaurus mount and that. That would take 3 dice away, so he would have spent 5 dice to play the Archosaurus mount. Have to play that on top of probably the Fire Archer, most likely.
He could do something like Bear, Lightbringer, Monk, Mount, Raptor Herder.
Sure. And he could
for no interaction, or he can just like he could have like a Bloodchains or an Earthquake or a Fester or whatever in his books. Like he could play like a control game.
Yep. So, all right. Well, I need to cut over. He's going to be ready here. So
I will jump in your game.
Okay, sounds good. I will message him and let him know I'm ready to play and see if he is. Let me get that started here.